Hello universe, and welcome to another episode of The Film Examiner. I am Kingsley Martin, and today we are going to be evaluating the film Grown Ups 2, starring Adam Sandler, Kevin James, David Spade, Chris Rock, Maya Rudolph, Salma Hayek, Steve Buscemi. Whew, there's a lot of them. Directed by Dennis Dugan, written by Adam Sandler and Fred Wolf. So, let's get right into it with the story. If you've seen the first Grown Ups, you know that that was about this group of five guys coming together, these five friends who were on a basketball team together, coming together to memorialize their coach who had passed away in one summer around the 4th of July holiday. Now, this second film is basically the evolution of what's happened. The Adam Sandler's character, who was a Hollywood agent in the first one, has now moved back to that hometown where all these friends are, and they're all just sort of closer and more tight-knit. The only character or principal character from the original Grown Ups that is not in this picture is Rob Schneider. I don't know why he was not in it, and I don't recall hearing in the film why he was not around, but he was not in this film. So if you like Rob Schneider in the first one, you'd be disappointed because he is not actually in the second one. But so the storyline is that it's the end of the year and the kids are getting ready for summer, and basically it's a throwback to their youth. They're all dealing with small little things. Chris Rock's character has remembered his anniversary, but his wife has forgotten. Adam Sandler's character runs into this bully that he knew in grade school, and he basically is trying to figure out whether to stand up to him or not, and how it will make it look for his children, and how his children will feel, and the whole thing. Kevin James's character is having bizarre encounters with he's like obsessed with hanging out with his mother for some reason, and he's worried his wife will find out. And David Spade has a son that he never knew he had. So it's the last day before the film starts, the last day before summer vacay, and that's when David Spade gets his surprise, you have a kid thing going on, and puts him in school because he doesn't know how to deal with this kid. So the whole movie is really about how they all address these different issues. Some were addressed, some were sort of just skimmed over and moved past. In a lot of ways, it's definitely not the exact same stuff that they were dealing with in the original Grown Ups. Adam Sandler's character, for example, in the original Grown Ups, he's the one who's doing pretty well, and at the end he decides to, and I'm not spoiling Grown Ups because it's 3 years old at this point, he decides to let someone else win this basketball game in part 1 because he wants that person who doesn't have a lot going on in their lives to feel and look good in front of their children, and he doesn't mind giving that up. In this one, it's really more about him deciding whether he's going to fight this guy or not. Now, his school bully, coincidentally enough, is played by Stone Cold Steve Austin from WWE fame, and he actually does a pretty good job in this film. There's not a lot of bad acting in this film. There are moments, for sure, that are really questionable in the film, but we'll get into that. Story-wise, there's nothing really groundbreaking story-wise here. This is really a family-oriented concept film, and that's one of the things I really liked about it, was that they kept the bad language to a very bare minimum, I believe, in a lot of ways. Now, there were still a lot of sexual innuendos. I'd probably say about 25% of sexual innuendos, thrown throughout the film. But they really tried to let situational comedy and sort of gag comedy really rule this film. And in a way, that makes it to where it's something you wouldn't mind taking your children to, because a lot of the sexual innuendos, for the most part, would go over younger children's heads. And then they would also not hear a lot of bad language. You do hear the occasional shit, you hear the occasional ass, but there's not a lot of the other, sinful 4 words, so to speak, for your kids to be exposed to. So if you're looking for a film that will not overexpose them to a lot of that kind of language, then this may be the kind of film that you want to check out. for them. As far as story is concerned, not a lot of, depth when it comes to story here. It's really just sort of surface stuff, They can have an end of the year or the beginning of the summer party, and it's about, the old and the new sort of colliding and trying to coexist and just taking the next level and growing up, basically, for these characters, and their relationships and how they handle them and their confidence. It's a coming-of-age story for people who are middle-aged, basically, in a lot of ways. And it's not a bad story, but it's not terribly, in depth. It's kind of just a movie that you can go and sort of go, okay, I'm hanging out. You really feel like you're hanging out with the characters in a lot of ways. It really is very much a hangout type of picture. But for that, I can't say that it's, this groundbreaking concept of a film, but in that way, it's, just a hanging out movie. I think you can kind of appreciate that aspect to it. So because of that particular approach to it, I think this movie's probably, story-wise, I'd say 3 1/4. Not anything that's going to change your life by any means, but something you can go into and not get, oh, I'm going to deal with their drama now. You're just dealing with their sort of, experiences in life, and you can relax and sort of hang out with the gang. So that way, I think it was really good. The characters, a lot of the characters have not really changed that much from the original movie, outside of the way they're telling their, outside of the story aspects that have been installed into their bits. Whereas Adam Sandler in the first one didn't mind losing. This is a little bit of a character conflict from the first one to the second movie. But Adam Sandler's character, he didn't mind losing in the past because it made him look good. In this one, he's really wants to stand up. Excuse me, found a frog. He really wants to stand up to this bully who mistreated him when he was younger. So it's a little bit of a difference. Whereas in the past, he didn't mind taking bullying. He just wanted, he knew this person was not so good off. In the second one, he wants to stand up for himself. And they presented it a little bit differently. Stone Cold Steve Austin, like I said, did a pretty good job in this. But most of the characters really haven't changed. They're just sort of, going playing around and doing crazy stuff. They do some weird stuff at Walmart. And there's a lot of sight gag stuff. As far as characters concerned, there's not a lot of, major evolution of characters. As far as I would say that Adam Sandler's character is the one that evolves the most of all of the characters in this picture. You see a little bit of evolution with his kids, but nothing, consequential. I think the most significant thing that happens character-wise would be Adam Sandler and then David Spade and his son sort of start to connect towards in the picture. But I think the Adam Sandler stuff pulled it off a little bit more believably in ways. And so as far as characters are concerned, not great characters in this, just sort of the old gang, and I would like to have seen another level of evolution to this. So when characters is concerned, I have to give the movie a 2.75. I would like to say before I move on, though, that as far as the dialogue is concerned in this film, I thought they did a pretty good job overall with dialogue. There were some times when I think they tried to push the humor, and then there was other times with the concept of just hanging out with the gang and joking around, that you got some very good one-liners that occurred just seemingly very naturally. And I think that that's one of the things I really liked about it, is that, it didn't need foul language to get across humor and or sexual innuendos in all cases to get across humor. And in a lot of ways, I like that. Even though I'm not terribly impressed with, characters in this aspect of it, I don't dislike the film as, from a humor perspective and in their ability to make decent jokes, but I'm analyzing it from the quality of, my opinion of the quality of the picture overall. So that just want to make sure that that is said. The direction's concerned, it's directed by the same guy who directed the original Grown Ups, and he's gone on to direct some other pictures, but none of them really between Grown Ups 1 and Grown Ups 2. He's really not done a lot of stuff since then. He's worked on Jack and Jill before. He's also an actor, Dennis Dugan. As far as direction is concerned in this film, it was basically the same as the first one. He knew how to put a scene together, but in a way I think he should have really given you more of those arcs for all the characters, or better arcs for certain characters than he did. So in that way, I don't think he passed on this. I think he knew how to create the same sort of mood as the original Grown-Ups, but I don't think he pushed the character evolutions to the place where they needed to be for the second one. So in a way, I think he failed in this one. Let me just step back for a second and say that I did say characters, making sure I said this. The characters, I think, were about a 2.75 out of all of them, because there just wasn't a lot of evolution of characters. And the same, when it comes down to directing, I think this is really kind of where this movie is at, too, is at about a 2.75. Not great by any means, but he knew how to create the atmosphere. But once he created that atmosphere, it got him to that 2.5, and then I needed to see something that got me to a place where I could see these characters evolve and sort of, feel the point of the movie, you know what I mean, outside of just hanging out with the gang. I wanted to get something from it that I didn't really get outside of the Stone Cold Steve Austin and Adam Sandler angle. As far as visuals is concerned, it's not bad cinematography. The cinematography is, okay. It's reminiscent of what it was in the first one. They have their sight gags. In the first one, they had a water park. In the second one, it's basically a cliff. They jump off into the water. So it's really nothing, majorly different. In the first one, they have a basketball game in the end. In the second one, they have, a battle between the old guys and a frat. The older crowd and the frat. So it's not like there's, this is it's just basically changing the names to protect the innocent kind of thing. Well, they just, said, okay, instead of a frat, instead of basketball, we'll make it frat. Basketball, frat, they kind of rhyme. So, excuse me, but in that way, I think the script fails and the direction fails because he should have pushed to find a way of really evolving those characters. So, he failed in that, but in cinematography, it just wasn't anything special, but it wasn't bad. I would put cinematography at about a 3.25. Really about a 3.25. Because it wasn't great, but it wasn't bad. It was solid. Put it that way. For what it was solid. Then, music. I think the music was better in the first one, believe it or not. I know there was a lot of original music in the first picture. And one of the things I liked about the first one, believe it or not, was when I was watching it to prepare for this whole movie, part two, is I heard a song by Adam Sandler called "Stay in the Man," which he did towards his father, and I thought that was a really good song. It had a lot of interesting aspects to it, really solid aspects, and told something about Adam Sandler, and displayed his sense of humor. So I like that. I don't think the music in this one was as strong as it was in the first one. I think they used, as I recall, they used some music that was a little more pop culture-y, more, recognizable. Whereas the other one had its own sort of voice and original music, and I think I like that aspect more than I did in this sequel. And that's really what I need to compare it to, is the second one to the first one. So in that way, I don't think they passed on this one. I really don't think they passed on this one. It goes with the direction sort of situation. It's like the first one had its own voice stamp, and then they just sort of did this one as a follow-up. Okay, we're going to make a second one because that one made money, and we got all these successful, recognizable names together. So musically speaking, I'm going to say it's about a 2.75. Unfortunately, it's about a 2.75. I really wish I could say that it was more, but it's really just, it's not. It's not. Overall, the story, script, direction, and music are an inferior version of the original Grown-Ups. And I actually don't think the original Grown-Ups is fantastic, but I do think it's good, and I think that this was just sort of a payday for a lot of these guys, and let's make another film. I have a lot of respect for Adam Sandler, so please understand that. I have a lot of respect for Kevin James, all of these actors, and there's even some moments. One of the things I will say I liked about this particular film, which is not story related, but it's really more about Chris Rock, is that instead of having the thing where they had where they were commenting on white people, Chris Rock's character was commenting on white people, in the first one and making some jokes, just here and there. It wasn't anything, major about, oh, white people are crazy or whatever. In this one, they actually intentionally have him sort of have a combatant with another gentleman who's black, and I thought that was really cool. For no other reason than the fact is that they didn't get it into race. They said, okay, this is just about this guy's weird and this guy's normal. It was just two guys, and it's all it came down to two guys, and this guy's normal, meaning Chris Rock, where he was special in his own way, but he's he's this way, and then you have this guy he goes up against and his kids, and they have a tendency to say, what? That was the part, that was the one thing I will say was funny, in a way. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to say that Chris, I'm going to give the characters a little bit more, I think, after thinking about that. I'm going to say that the characters are probably, instead of a 2.75, about a 3. Because Chris Rock's character did have a little more of an evolution. I do think they could have done that a little bit better. And focused maybe on one of them a little bit more than they did the others. But I do think Chris Rock's character was, and his daughter, both had a nice evolution. All the actors there's not really a lot of bad acting. There are some moments, but that's why it's about a 3. Because there's not bad acting, but there's some moments that's questionable. So overall, I'm going to have to rate let's go back again. So when it came to story, I said this is about a 3.25. Characters about a 3. Direction about a 2.75. Cinematography about a 3, and about 2.75 for the music. I'm going to say this movie's about a 3. 3 out of 5. Not great, but if you like the original Grown Ups, you might want to go hang out with the crew again one more time for Grown Ups 2. So that is my examination, not really an autopsy, just an examination, an evaluation of what they're doing here. Definitely not an autopsy. It could have been worse, and it wasn't. So that's my evaluation examination of Grown Ups 2, starring Adam Sandler, Kevin James, Chris Rock, David Spade, Maya Rudolph, Salma Hayek, Steve Buscemi, directed by Dennis Dugan, written by Fred Wolf and Adam Sandler, who also wrote the original Grown Ups. So, there you have it. Thanks for watching, take care of yourself, and I will see you next time here on the Film Examiner. Take it easy.